Hello, welcome to this video. You may have seen on my profile recently that I launched a project all about discussing the concept of eating insects as a food source. And this is a new project that I just want to open up the conversation and really explore. But before I delve into that, I really just wanted to find out where the sustainability conversation is at the moment, because I feel like it's something that's really evolved so much in just the recent years, which is what brings us to our guest. So I wanted to talk to Sustainable Stephanie, who knows a lot about sustainability. Hey, Steph.
Hey Jess,
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. So, do you want to start by just giving a really brief background into sustainability for anyone who doesn't already follow you?
Yeah, so I'll give a very brief overview because I know we've got lots to talk about and I don't want to spend too long talking about myself. But yeah, I started my Instagram page, Sustainable Stephanie, about 4 years ago now, which is crazy. So back in 2017, and I started it because I just wasn't practicing what I was preaching. I was working as an environmental consultant at the time, and I realized that what I was telling my clients to do was just basically I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. So I kind of had a hard look at myself in the mirror and realized that I needed to change my own behaviors. If I wasn't doing that, how do I expect the companies that I was working with to do that? So I started Sustainable Stephanie to kind of document those sustainable swaps that I was making, and then it kind of grew from there and got bigger and bigger. But yeah, so Sustainable Stephanie is something I do in my part-time. I'm a full-time sustainability manager at a higher education institution at a university in London. So I've been in the kind of sustainability sector now for over 5 years, I think coming up to about 6 years now. So I've seen how things have changed, but I'm also interested in sustainability from a lifestyle perspective as well.
Okay, great. So yeah, it's amazing that you have such a kind of broad overview and looking at it from so many different angles as well. So I feel like sustainability has just as a topic and a talking point has just evolved so much in even just the past, say, 5 years. So as someone who works in sustainability, how have you seen that conversation really develop and evolve?
Yeah, so the conversation has changed a lot, and even recently it's changed a lot. But if I think back to when I started my job, and actually not even then, so let's take this 10 years ago. So when I was at university and I first started off, I was doing a lot of work experience with companies because we know how demanding it is to get a job when you're a graduate and how difficult
Yeah.
that is. And at the time, the conversation with sustainability, it was all about payback periods. It was all about sustainability is really good because it saves you money, and we weren't really kind of pushing, the true purpose of sustainability. It felt like we were spending all of our time trying to win people over and trying to say to managers, to whoever you are working with, to friends, to family, why we need to be talking about this and why this is important. And that's just completely changed now. People just get it. People get sustainability, and you don't have to win them over anymore, which is great because I don't know about you, but it's exhausting having to
Hmm.
constantly say, why we need to be thinking about climate change, why we need to be thinking about the environment. It's tiring. So the fact that we've already won people over now, and I think that's probably down to David Attenborough. He's done a good job with that. The whole blue planet,
Yeah.
after watching Blue Planet 2, a lot of people woke up what was happening, in like the oceans, and then it's just gone bigger and bigger from there. So very early on, I think the conversation with sustainability was all around the environment as well. People didn't realize that actually with sustainability, there's three aspects to it. So the whole, three pillars of sustainability, maybe you've heard of them. So like the environment, the economy, and then the social aspect as well. And you had sustainability managers that were just specialists in environment, and they weren't thinking about the economy and those social aspects. And kind of speaking quite frankly, Sustainability just, it wasn't trendy. You know, when I was at uni, it was like, oh, environment, what's that then? Like what you do coloring in, is it like geography? But all of those kind of, you know, that whole stigma of sustainability is gone now. Sustainability just seems like it's, people want to talk about it, people get it, and that's just so refreshing. That's the way it should be. So to kind of lose that image of it being some stuffy, boring subject that is just a bit like geography but not, I'm so pleased that that has gone. And I think even more recently, so when I kind of set up my profile, people started to think more about how do they impact, you know, the wider climate, and how are they impacting the wider globe. I think people weren't really making that connection. It was always, oh well, that's somebody else's problem, and you know, that's that big business's problem, it's nothing to do with me. And yes, businesses do play a big role in this, but actually what, you know, what's happening is people need to think about their own footprint. And that's great. It's good that people are thinking about their own impacts. You know, we've seen this whole kind of zero waste movement happen. We've seen, you know, more people going plant-based, which is fantastic. But in the same instance, if we're talking about how that conversation has moved on, one thing that's really good is that I think we've become a bit more mature about things like zero waste. You know, we've recognized that's really cool to be able to fit all your waste in one little jar. Like, wow, what an amazing thing to do. But realistically, for most of us, that isn't achievable to fit a year's worth of waste in a single jar. So I think our conversation has matured in that way, and we recognize that that isn't accessible for everyone. Not everyone can afford maybe to be zero waste. They don't have a bulk shop just down the road that they can refill their glass containers with. They may not even have the time to do that. You know, if you're a single mother and you're working 2 jobs, how can you expect somebody to have the time to cook everything from scratch? So I think we've matured in our conversation that way as well, which is important, because otherwise we start to exclude people from the conversation. And you know, if we do that, we're not going to get anywhere with this environmental movement. So a lot has happened, a lot has changed. And even if we think more recently as well, so with COVID, you know, at the beginning of that COVID pandemic, all I heard was people saying how good it is for the planet. Oh, it's really good, you know, we're not flying any more aeroplanes, and you know, the air quality's never been better than it is. And okay, yeah, that was happening. But even within, you know, a matter of months, actually a matter of weeks, people were thinking, well, hang on a minute, is this actually that great for the planet? We saw things like COP, the Conference of the Parties, that being pushed back. We then saw the Environment Bill in the UK being postponed. And, you know, we actually had that critical thinking to COVID to think maybe it's not that great for the planet. So that was a really rambly answer to what you asked me. But in summary, I would say the conversation is always evolving and it's always changing, and that's so important. We need it to always change, because if we just, you know, stick with one route and go for it, we're not going to get anywhere with that. We always need to be critiquing what we're doing. So I think that is a good thing in itself, that the conversation has changed so much in that time, and it needs to change as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was, yeah, really insightful, and just sounds like sustainability, the whole conversation is really going in the right direction. I think, as you say, it's important to kind of consider so many aspects. And what you were saying about kind of the zero waste lifestyle, I remember when that first kind of became a thing, I guess mainly on social media, and it was seen as such like a cool concept and something to aim for. But when people have asked me about that, my answer has kind of always been, we don't live in a zero waste world, so it's not realistic for the majority of people. And although it is great, it's not kind of the only thing that you should be aiming for. There's so many other aspects. So this leads us quite nicely onto my next question, which was about kind of, so we've talked about how the general conversation of sustainability has really evolved, but I guess this is kind of more on social media, but I guess just kind of in general, when the blue planet 2 thing kind of happened and that big movement and everyone really woke up to, I guess, plastic pollution as kind of a big thing, people were making a lot of like sustainable swaps and all different things like that, which was so great and still is really useful and a very good thing to do. But I feel like recently the conversation has changed quite a lot to be changing from these kind of small habits which people are still doing but they're not talking about as much because they feel like they really want to do more and take more action and bigger actions and influence more people and just be kind of bigger and better. And although there's still a place for those kind of sustainable swaps and looking at kind of your everyday items and how you can improve those to be more environmentally friendly, there seems to be this much bigger conversation. So I just wanted to ask you kind of how you've seen that evolve and what you think of that evolving, and do you think that that is going in the right way as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And even if I look at how I've addressed and communicated sustainability, that has changed for me as well. So I started off with doing the whole sustainable swap thing, and I still do that. I try to do my sustainable swaps on a Sunday, but you've probably seen those posts drop off somewhat because there's kind of only so many swaps that you can make in your lifestyle. So yeah, I very much started off with that because I found it quite an empowering way to make it feel like I was making a difference, and you know, it was something visible that I could see. I could see like, great, I've got my bamboo toothbrush, like I've done my bit, that's excellent. And it's hard because I think when you're starting out on this journey, the things that, you know, lobbying an MP and signing a petition, you do it and you don't necessarily see right in front of you the change that you've made. But actually the change you can make from doing those things, from addressing the systemic change that is needed, is so important. And that conversation has changed. I think that's really important because we are not in a society that is sustainable. We're in an inherently unsustainable society. Like if you take, for example, forests as an example, that their capital value is only found generally once you've cut that tree down and you've cut that forest down. So that kind of just summarizes how wrong things are, and we need to create a system that enables people to make those sustainable decisions and those sustainable swaps, and not necessarily buying the sustainable toothbrush. It's a lot bigger than that. So I completely agree that that's why I think the conversation is changing, is because people have almost done their sustainable swaps and they're thinking, you know, what more is there? What more do I need to change? And they're probably seeing the barriers that are out there. You know, in government, that's a big one. Ultimately, it's not just on individuals that are going to solve problems like the climate crisis. We need large businesses and we need governments to make that change. I mean, I was doing a climate reality presentation last night and somebody asked me the question of, well, how's the UK doing in terms of our commitments with the Paris Agreement? And we're not on track. We're not on track to achieve our net zero commitments from the Paris Agreement. And, you know, realistically, is one person buying a toothbrush gonna change that? No, we need lots of people making changes and putting pressure, you know, on the government to actually address these bigger problems. And we can't put those huge problems on individuals because we're just going to completely disengage people. So yeah, I think that systemic change and considering things from an intersectional perspective as well, and making sure that we are not you know, putting any groups, outcasting any groups just by the nature of who they are and what they do. You know, we need everyone on this journey. And if we're not recognizing where people, you know, have struggles and people can't be included in the conversation, we're not going to progress. So yeah, sustainable swaps and systemic change, they are two like completely different things, but they have their space in the conversation. I think it's important that, you know, we are not saying to people, if you're just making sustainable swaps, that's not good enough, you need to be doing this, because it's gonna alienate people. We need to have a kind of positive approach to this, I think, and bring people along with us on that journey. And actually, sustainable swaps, they do have their place. So I was thinking the other day, I saw Dove that brought out their refillable deodorant. I don't know if you've...
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's amazing. That's a big organization that's decided to completely, rethink about the way that they manufacture their products. And I wonder if that would have happened if it wasn't for all of these small businesses that have started up, that have got refillable deodorant products and other sustainable swaps. And if there wasn't that market out there from people like you and I and people watching now that are interested in those sustainable swaps, would Dove gone and put all the effort into making a refillable deodorant? I don't think so. So I don't think we should bash sustainable swaps. They help people feel like they're in control of the kind of problems that we're facing with plastic pollution and waste issues. They have their place. There's two, there's no point in saying one's better than the other.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And yeah, it's just kind of, once these big companies see that there is a demand to go in the more sustainable direction, they have to change their products if they want to still survive as a business. So yeah, definitely agree that there's still a space for them. Taking it back a bit to, I guess, the current situation now, and a lot of individuals are working from home. And I think that whole kind of situation, I mean, for me, it's coming up to almost a year that I've been working from home, which sounds crazy. I can't believe that it's been that long, but I think it's really getting a lot of businesses and companies to kind of consider whether people are going to start going back into the office at some point, or whether people are going to continue working from home. And I think it's made people think about how they can kind of influence their workplaces into being more sustainable. I think it's sometimes a bit of a difficult conversation because people just don't really know where to start in their workplaces. And I know you did an amazing Instagram post the other day about kind of the benefits of working from home and looking at that from a, I guess, traveling to work and commuting kind of point of view, especially as well. So I guess, do you have any advice from people who are wanting to kind of influence their workplace, find out how to make their workplace more sustainable, and also even just to influence people at home who are now having more conversations with their friends and family who they live with about living more sustainably as well?
Yeah, I mean, that is a really good question, actually. So, and I naturally am really passionate about how you can make a difference at work by the nature of my job. So absolutely, you can make a difference at work. So the first thing I would do is find out what your company is already doing, because in my experience as a sustainability manager, we're so busy doing things that we don't often shout about all the great things that we've done. So yeah, go to your company website, find out if you've got a sustainability manager or an environment officer. There may be somebody like that in your company, maybe not if it's a small company. But if it's a small company, that's great, because you may be even closer to the CEO of that company, so you can influence change that way. So first of all, find out what is already going on, because it's good if that, your company has some strong foundations. I would find out who the people are that can make a difference. So who are the change makers in that organization, and drop them an email to say that you are passionate about sustainability, and what you want to see your company delivering in that space. That is good in so many ways, because from my experience, whenever I get one of those emails, it kind of makes me do a little happy dance and think like, right, this is good. I've got an ally in the company that I'm going to use. But also what it does is that it brings a real kind of weight to the projects that I want to deliver as a sustainability manager, because it shows senior leadership teams, the ones that have the money, that make the decisions, that actually their workforce really care about this, and they've got tangible email evidence to say, here are the X number of people that have contacted me to say they're interested in sustainability. So find out what's happening, find out who the people are that you need to speak to, and see if there's something that you could get involved with. So maybe that's a placement that you could be doing. If you're on like a graduate scheme or something, you could think about embedding sustainability within your graduate scheme maybe, or your internship. And if you're a full-time colleague, then you could think about some of the sustainability initiatives that your company is leading on. They may even have some kind of a champion scheme that you could get involved with. And if they don't, then I would kind of push your company to get one of those, because it's a really good way to infiltrate change across the whole company. And if your company doesn't have any of those things, maybe you're in a small business and you don't know how to make a difference. And also, we're talking about companies. If you're a student, think of your university as a company, because it is. So, you know, that there are people that you can speak to that are working for the university, a bit like myself, that would love to hear from you. So don't be excluded from this if you're watching and you're a student. But yeah, if you don't have any of those people in your company, maybe you're a CEO and you're high up in management, what you could do is think about international kind of days of celebration. So things like World Environment Day. That's a great opportunity for you to think about what place you have in the wider global agenda, and how your company, or you know, what you are doing in your role contributes to climate change and tackling the climate crisis. So things like the World Environment Day are really good to get involved with. There's Fair Trade Fortnight coming up as well in February, so towards the end of February and into March. So that's something that you could get involved with. And now's a really good time actually to start having those conversations with your colleagues and people that you want to influence, especially on the topic of energy management, because now we're all working from home. I don't know about you, but when I got my energy bill through for January, I was pretty shocked when I saw how much my energy consumption had gone up from purely me working at home. And people are interested in this now because they want to know, actually, I'm the one paying the bill, so I'm going to make sure that I do some simple things like switching off my monitor at the end of the day, because I'm the one paying the utility bill. So it's a good time actually to think about sustainability. And in terms of going outside of your workplace, because obviously work is just one avenue of your life, friends and family is another. And this is really important to speak to your friends and family about this topic, because friends and family, you've got a good relationship with them, so you can speak comfortably about this, and not worry about what you're maybe going to get back from them. Sometimes when you go out at work and speak to people about sustainability, you can never really know what they think about it. You may even be speaking to a climate skeptic and you don't know it. Whereas with friends and family, actually, it's easier to have those conversations. You're not worried about being judged. And I think friends and family are really influenced by each other. So when I started doing Sustainable Stephanie, I've had messages from friends saying, I've gone on a beach clean and this is what I've collected, and I've bought this, which is a sustainable product, and people sending me articles to things that are happening in different organizations that are sustainability related. So actually, speaking to your friends and family is a huge impact that you can make as an individual. And I think people forget that. I think people look at influencers and sustainability influencers and think that they've got all the answers. And we don't have all the answers. It's great that there are sustainability influencers, don't get me wrong, but actually when you look at the number of followers that even the biggest sustainability influencers have, that's a real kind of scratch on the surface. A few, 100,000 followers, great, okay. But if everyone was to speak to their friends and family about this just goes beyond that. And I think people forget how powerful their influence is. You don't have to set up a dedicated profile. If you do, fantastic. We need more people speaking about sustainability. So, that was something that worked well for me to document my kind of sustainable swaps. By all means, go and do that. But just speak to your friends and family about this. That's a great starting point. And what to speak to them about as well, because that may be a question, you don't know where to begin. Now, when I started thinking about my sustainability impacts, I didn't have a plan as to how I was going to go about it. I kind of just had this awakening of, oh my God, I have an impact on the planet and I'm not thinking about it. I'm just assuming it's somebody else's problem. So I know some people like to focus in different areas. They think about, okay, I'm going to look at my bathroom products or my kitchen products or what I'm eating or how I'm traveling. There's no set way of going about doing it. I would just say get stuck in. Just look at what is going to be sustainable for you as well. That's the thing, we talk about sustainability for the planet, but there's no point in you trying to do something that is just not going to last the test of time. Take your time with it, and don't get rid of all of the items that you've got in your fridge or your cupboard because they're not sustainable. Use what you've got already, and just take time with it, because it does take time. I mean, I've been thinking about my sustainability footprint since 2017, and I feel like I've still got a long way to go in this. So don't think it happens overnight, and just please don't feel scared to talk about these topics. You don't have to have a degree in environmental science to think about sustainability in a critical way. Everyone's voice in this is so important, and we genuinely need everyone to get involved with this and talking about this, because otherwise, we're not going to solve some of these quite scary issues that are facing us at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree with all of that. And I think that just opening up these conversations and even just having chats like this is just so important, because it just creates awareness that, like, sometimes you'd be talking to someone and something about, say, sustainability or the environment comes up quite randomly in a conversation that wasn't necessarily about that, but then suddenly you've sparked an awareness that wasn't there before, and you never know what impact you're going to have on another person. So I think definitely just talking about it is a great way forwards. Whilst this conversation in general about sustainability is really evolving so much, and we're kind of seeing that what our planet needs is changing a bit as well, what do you think is kind of the way forwards for us to really give the planet what it needs, I guess?
That is a tough question. What is
It's
the
a big
way?
question.
That is a tough question. I would say that we've spoken about sustainable swaps, we've spoken about systemic change, but we do really need systemic change. We need a system that encourages people to make the right differences, the right choices to make a difference. We need to give everyone access to some things that are quite basic in life. Food, water, not everybody has access to those things. And sustainability is not just about climate change, it's about equality. And we're not seeing that equality at the moment. And that's why systemic change is so important. I think people can sometimes switch off from systemic change because they think, oh, it's just so big, like, how are we ever going to tackle this? But we need to talk about it, and we need to recognize that the way that our economy is set up at the moment is not going to be prosperous for the future. We're already fighting over things like food, water, oil reserves. I could go on about that for ages, but I know we've only got a limited amount of time. So systemic change is definitely important. We need to make sure that we have a green recovery from COVID-19. There was a lot of talk about the green recovery from COVID-19 early on, and I haven't heard much about it anymore. So we need to make sure that we're holding our government account. We're in this very unique opportunity at the moment where we've realised that we can do things differently. We've seen workplaces go online remotely in a matter of weeks. We've done things that we didn't think were possible. Well, let's apply this now to things like the climate crisis and wider global sustainability challenges. We know that we can change if we want. We just now need to make it happen. And that sounds easier said than done. We now just need to make it happen, but we can if we apply enough pressure on the right people. We need to recognise that things aren't equal. I've said that. That's incredibly important. Otherwise, we are just isolating people from this conversation. We need to protect and enhance biodiversity as well. That's a really big thing. So we need to have a healthy functioning ecosystem that's essential for both animals that have a right to exist, but also essential for us as humans. We talk a lot about the climate crisis, but actually we're in a biodiversity crisis. You know, we are losing species at an unprecedented rate that we directly and indirectly rely on. And I think sometimes people kind of compartmentalize things. They think, oh yeah, I'm going to sign this petition about biodiversity, and we've got a problem with the oceans, and there's a problem over here about equality, and you know how people aren't getting enough food, and actually all these things are connected. So, but at the heart of that, I mean, a healthy, functioning ecosystem. That's so important. And I think as humans, we try to overcomplicate things. You know, we think about carbon capture storage, and yes, that's great, it has its place, but let's not forget about the basic things such as trees that do an amazing job of regulating and sequestering carbon from our atmosphere. So it's just about how we approach these issues. So we need to think about biodiversity, and I think that the real way forward is for everyone to think about how sustainability is a part of their day-to-day lives, both personally and professionally. If everyone did that, you know, we'd be making big strides. Now, it's important to recognize that we're never going to achieve that. We're never going to have everyone thinking about sustainability as part of their roles professionally and personally. I'd love to think that, but when you look at, you know, the former president that was in office, I don't think he was thinking about sustainability as part of his roles professionally or personally. So we're not going to get everyone on this journey, but when you look at social movements, the minute you have, you know, more than 10% of the community thinking about this, that's when change happens. And you need lots of different people on that journey. You need the activists, you need the people that at the moment are in tunnels under stations, you know, lobbying against HS2 in Euston. You need the people that are in CEO positions. You need artists that are talking about this, that bring the subject of the climate crisis to life. You need scientists that obviously are backing up, you know, the hard facts around this. So we really need that diverse mix of people in this conversation to really make a difference. And we need to recognize that everyone plays their part, but not everyone is equal in that. You know, governments, they play a far bigger role in solving these problems than individuals do, than, you know, Joe Bloggs on the street. He plays his part, but there's some people that that have a bigger role than others. So it's important to recognize that. So again, that was a big question, big answer to your question, but that's the problem with sustainability. There's never, you know, one simple answer. There's a trade-off here, a trade-off there, and you never get a simple answer, unfortunately.
No, I think it's definitely given a lot of food for thought, and I think it's a great way to kind of round up this conversation as well. Like, sustainability is such a complex topic, and I'm sure you're the same, that kind of just through our work every day, people just want like a straightforward answer and almost like a yes or no. And it's just, that's not the way. But I think it's amazing to see that we're just making so much progress and positive change. So that's very promising and great. So thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It's been just really useful. And yeah, like I said, just amazing to just have these kind of open conversations, just to see how far we've kind of evolved and where we're going and how much progress we've made. I think it's so important to kind of celebrate that progress, as well as look to the future and just see what we can do going forwards as well. And yeah, Seth, we'll chat again soon.
Absolutely. I think we should keep these open kind of sustainability chats going. It's been really good fun.
Definitely.